Making Israeli communion bread. This is a recipe from my friend. I should have asked her where she got it. I milled hard red wheat and I added a teaspoon of salt already. I'm going to cut in the butter and add a cup of granola. This is just homemade granola that we make, and it has some nuts and adds some protein. So there's protein in the red wheat, there's protein in, oh, this has got stuff all over it. Basically extra protein. We add nuts like almonds or pecans a lot of times to, I'm getting to the bottom of the bowl. So my flour, you'll see, is not flour, it is Sucanat, because we mill our own flour. So there we go. Now I'm gonna add in butter. This is 1 cup of butter, so you need 2 sticks. This makes 2 loaves. This recipe for today is going to be a sweet communion bread that we will actually use as communion for communion, but it's also what we will eat sometimes for breakfast or a snack or even dessert or Passover and things like that. This butter, you will notice, is a lot darker than this butter. Hang on, sorry, I have somebody cooking over here. Pour quickly. Making noodles. There you go. Okay. So this is grass-fed butter, probably has much more nutrients. If you have seen a pasture-raised egg compared to a store-bought egg, it's kind of the same deal. Grass-fed beef is also a lot higher in nutrients than grain-fed beef. So I prefer grass-fed butter, just harder to come by and more expensive. Okay, so I'm going to knead that in. And like I said, this is a sweet communion bread. Sometimes if we are just doing communion, then I won't make it this sweet. But I want to use it as communion and it kind of be a treat today. Typically I use honey. I'm out of our Azure baker's honey. To cut in butter, sometimes it is good just to use your hand. You want the butter to be about pea-size shape, or pea-size, because you want chunks of butter to melt in your bread, kind of like a biscuit. But again, it's not a huge deal if there are some chunks throughout. So yes. And again, you can make this in a healthier way. Today I just used a cup of Sucanat. That is pretty sweet. Okay, so it is blended in fairly good. Now I'm going to add in the water. Typically this is warm water because you mix the honey in so that it will kind of dissolve well into your bread. But today, since I'm not using honey, and I don't want to use my nice local honey, it's just room temperature water or even cold water from the filter. Okay, so we're gonna mix that in, and I'm going to add in, if I can open it, I should have hit it on. Okay, going to add in some cherries. Now typically my hands aren't dirty, so I just reach my hand in, but we'll probably do a handful. Then we'll mix this back in. Now it does look a little wet today. If you can, see if you can see it, sorry. It does look a little wet today, so I may actually add a little extra flour, depending on how much I use. Sometimes I use 3/4 of a cup of water, sometimes I use a full cup. So I will pause it. I'm going to mill me some wheat, get it ready to roll out, and get my pan so that we can cook it for 30 minutes at 350. So I did not actually have to mill wheat because I had some, I think it's hard red and hard white just kind of mixed together. I also did not mix any in. I wanted you all to see it. So yeah, you can just use less water. That would have made more sense than doing it this way, but it works this way. And as I've shared in videos before, I share these with my kids so that they can make food for me without me having to be in here directing them. Now, I do cook with my kids, I do direct them. However, we all know that when you have lots of kids and lots of things to do, I'm getting ready to have a baby. This would be a great time if I want them to make communion bread and they're like, oh, I can't remember. We actually have 2 or 3 recipes for this, and depending on, you know, what we have on hand is the different things that we use. So I wanted to show this to you. You can even mix it with a little oatmeal and flour to kind of knead it out. I typically just do it in the stand mixer, so it doesn't really need kneading. But this is what I'm doing today. So, oh, I forgot I still have some. Oh, sorry, it is hot today. I'm making several different breads just because we are making buns right now because we have company coming, and then we have communion bread, and I'm making just regular bread for tomorrow. But I prefer to just kind of do that in one day so that it's less that you have to do. Okay, so once it's kind of kneaded in, it's incorporated. Hopefully you can tell from there. Now, you don't want to knead it too much because remember, we do not want that butter to melt. Hand me the bread halfer cutter knife thing, whatever this is. This is great. Also, when dough gets stuck on your counter and it turns to like concrete, this is great to scrape it off with. So you're going to split this into 2 loaves, or you can do 1 gigantic loaf, and then you are just going to push it out. Now, we celebrate Passover. We are not Jewish, but we celebrate Passover because it's in the Bible. And when we do Passover, we tradition that all of my kids now know, we've passed on to the little kids and they all enjoy, is the part where they will take a fork and they will pierce the bread or put stripes in the bread, and that is to represent Christ and his sacrifice. And so anyways, just something neat that I thought I would share if this is something that you're doing with your kids. I love traditions. I love when the older kids pass down younger kid traditions. And so whenever I make this and it's Passover, they are all ready. They all remember. Oh, and you should just do this on the pan. Sorry. You should just do this on the pan so that you don't have to pick it up. So typically what I do, I also use my USA pans, which are a little bit better. But I'll just do it on the pan itself so that it just is kind of squishy there. So yeah, so you now have 2 loaves. You can leave out the fruit. You can add other fruit. You can add raisins, craisins, dates, you name it. You can add it in there. Again, this is what we had on hand today, and this is the bread that we wanted to make. So try out the communion bread. Like I said, it will bake 30 minutes, and then you can cut it up like a pizza.